Hey guys, welcome back. Have you read the very famous novel 1984 by George Orwell? Well, Ravish has mentioned about this novel in the preface of this book, The Free Voice, and he basically draws parallel between the plot of that novel and the present society of India. And there is an interesting line here where he says that our phones and screens are tools of control in ways still unimaginable for many of us. And it's actually quite happening in today's time, like the Pegasus case that was in the news a while ago. So it's almost the similar as it was happening in the novel 1984. So we will start with the first chapter, Speaking Out. So in the first chapter, he talks about his confessions and confrontations, and in a way his motivation behind speaking out. Why did he choose to speak out, and what is the kind of price that he pays for that? All these things he has mentioned, and he says that in a democracy like ours, why are we in a situation today where we are saying that you are daring to speak out? Like, the use of this very word dare shouldn't be there in a free democracy like India, supposedly. So he begins with the story of Justice Judge Loya, and his death case. So it's actually an excerpt from his primetime show. So I'd like to read it. It's quite heartbreaking actually to read this one. So Ravish says, I want to confess something to you. I felt fear too when I read the story. Yet I'm devoting this primetime show to it so that Anuradha Biani does not feel that her brother, the Judge Loya, was probably killed and we did not speak. Judge Loya's son should not feel that someone killed his father and none of his countrymen will speak for him. It is not as if we are not afraid. We are. But the way out of this fear was to bring this story before everyone. Now whatever will be, will be. If I'll translate it to Hindi, like the manner in which Ravish used to present his show, the primetime show, the last line, now whatever will be, will be. I'm just trying to translate that to Hindi in his way. So it would be like, ab jo hoga, so hoga. And after that, he says that he chose to speak out because he wanted to get free of this fear, of this continuous fear of living in this, in a way, suffocating space where you are constantly feel threatened to speaking out, to ask questions. And then he goes on to say, talk a little more about his confrontations actually. So he says that as I was heading to the NDTV studios that November afternoon to conduct my usual primetime show, I was wrestling with the silence surrounding the allegation that a judge had died in suspicious circumstances. To give you just a brief context, let me quickly tell you who actually was Judge Loya. So Judge Brijgopal Harkrishan Loya, who had been presiding over the CBI court in the Sohrabuddin Sheikh fake encounter case in Gujarat, in which the BJP president Amit Shah, who is currently the Home Minister of India, was the prime accused. So in fact, the death of Judge Loya was very suspicious, and he was at that time presiding over the CBI court in this particular fake encounter case. So he says that this is not a very usual thing that happens, and can people be so afraid that they cease to have faith in everyone, even in themselves? Then he goes on to talk about his mental state, how he was dealing with this fear. So he says that it was almost 9 p.m. The fear was threatening to overwhelm me. There was no one around me with whom I could share my apprehensions. So I looked within myself and saw a news anchor falling into a deep, dark well. To save himself, all that he had was his voice, which he wanted to reach to people at maximum pitch and volume. I used each word as the step of a ladder and began to climb out of the depths of my fear. And after I finished broadcasting the primetime episode, it felt as if I had kept a promise which I had made to Judge Loya's wife. I had also freed myself of fear. It's in a way very liberating for him, as he's saying that he had to speak out, he had to put this out for everyone to see, that how we are as a country, as a society have become so fearful that we are even afraid of asking the very normal questions that is very much expected from the citizens of a free democracy. So then he talks a little bit more about fear. Then he says that when you are choosing to speak out, apart from the fear, there are many other repercussions as well. So you actually feel alone. You are in a way sidelined, or just you are not allowed to mingle with your friends, and they actually maintain or keep a distance from you because perhaps they also live in the same fear as you are. So he says that speaking out will never be easy. It may even well be an act of bravery. But what is significant is something else. When you speak, you must first challenge yourself. You first become your own interrogator before asking questions of others. If your life is clean and uncorrupted, your voice will have the ring of truth. You strain your entire being from within. Actually, he says that it's not easy for everyone to speak out, because it's actually quite convenient to remain silent, because going against the power is not something that many will choose. And that's why he's saying, as he has mentioned in the preface as well, that the legacy media, the mainstream media, the big media houses and organizations, they're mostly compromised and sold out to the authority, to the power, to the people who are at the top. So that's why he's saying that the handful of people who are left in this space, who are choosing to speak out, what are the challenges and what are the fear that they are facing. So he goes on to say that everything, your job, your credibility, and in fact your life itself, everything is at stake. So it's huge, right? Where your fear ends is where those who sit at the top of the power hierarchy go to work. So it's like when you keep aside your fear and when you question the people who are sitting at the top, that's when they go to work. That's exactly his words. So you have to set aside your fear, you have to be free of fear, and that, he says, is a constant struggle, and quite rightly, it's not easy. So he says that courage is nothing but the struggle to emerge from one circle of fear into another, then another. It's like a constant struggle to be free of fear. That is what courage, as Ravish says. And then he talks about the people who always tells him that why are you doing this, why don't you keep silent, or you need to take care of yourself. So he says that these are not warning signs, because they are not warning to speak carefully, but warnings to not speak at all. They are telling me to not do my job. So he says that it's actually very challenging to speak out in this time when the fear is so high and among everyone. And then he talks a bit about his childhood, like how he was a very fearful child, and there is an instance about his mother and his wife, his examination time and college life, all that stuff he has mentioned a bit. Then he says that I feel a great deal of fear even today. I'm very afraid of making mistakes. So it's like it's that resting place between courage and rashness. He says that fear is also what saves you from rashness. Fear is that resting place between courage and rashness, that point from where you commit a course of action. Pretty interesting. Power knows who should be removed from the path of its onward march and when. So he's again mentioning the authority, the mighty people who are there at the top. But he says that in a democracy, people will always be there who will keep alive the act of speaking out. And the thrill of this journey between fear and courage has destroyed my sleep. It has gained me abuse and sometimes made my ears resound with applause. So he basically says that it's a bittersweet experience. Sometimes you will be hugely abused, harassed in multiple ways, but at the same time you will also be applauded for the work that you do for speaking out. So it's actually a choice between choosing to speak out and not choosing to, and especially when you are a journalist, as he says, the stake is much higher. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned.